Shias believed that Ali retained that knowledge inwardly. And what's interesting is it is said he was compiling, when Muhammad died, he locked himself in his house and compiled a Quran, because he knew where it had been said, what had been revealed, what Muhammad meant by it, because Muhammad had explained obscure passages. They both believed it came from Allah, the divine mind, but it was filtered through Muhammad, and Ali knew about all these subtleties, right? And so, of course, the first thing he did was, that's the legacy to protect, is the teachings in the Quran. And in my commentary on the Quran, I've gone into that. And what's interesting is it's said that writing by Ali also had a commentary attached to it. And it was also in chronological order, because he knew the order. Unfortunately, it seems to have vanished. I'm trying to get hold of it. So if anyone's got Ali's original Quran hidden in a library in Persia, please get in touch. I'd love to compare it with my commentary, because Ali's is the more authentic, because he was there. I'd love to see, and he was a very mystical thinker, Ali. He understood the depths of meaning within the Quran. It's layered. A lot of it's allegorical. You need the key to unlock it. I've done my best in my own simple way to try and eavesdrop on the mind of Ali and Muhammad as the Quran came into form. What was this about? It's a very, very esoteric text, in my opinion, and I've tried to explain that. So, the good news is that although the warlords took over control of Islam and ran it like a business, they produced a form of Islam that was very much about being seen to perform certain rituals in certain ways that could identify you as part of that group sociologically. And it had nothing to do with your inner state or your inner faith. It was like wearing the right uniform, And so that was the form of Islam that spread. That was called Sunni Islam, meaning the way, the path. And to be a Sunni Muslim, you had to follow these certain types of things. It was associated also with Muhammad's last wife, Aisha, who he married when she was quite young. And anti-Muslims always grumble, they say he's a paedophile and stuff, but no, it was just what they did in those days. And he loved her very much, and she became the spokeswoman for the Sunni path. And her claim was, well, I was with Muhammad, he loved me more than anyone else, so believe what I say is true is true. And a lot of people believed that. The trouble with that argument is that she was very, very young when she first met Muhammad, and there's no way that a 12-year-old girl can understand the mind of a prophet in his late 50s as to his most esoteric intentions. It's just, I'm a teacher, I know, much as I really like young minds, there's no way they can understand the full complexity of how Muhammad thought, whereas Ali did. So I think this was a Sophia-phobic catastrophe that happened. The fear of wisdom. Ali was shut out, and his teachings and his book was lost. But they had children. Fatima and he had children who survived a bit, and then there was a line of 12 imams, guides of the faithful, that came down from them. And the teaching of Shiism is that they passed down orally the secrets of true Islam, what Ali and Muhammad had really been trying to do, and what was the real story behind the Quran. And that teaching is kept alive to this day in Persia, in the Shia strongholds of thought, where the great universities are, that have been going for a long time. And some of the greatest philosophers of Islam have been Shias, like Mullah Sadra, who was writing a book like My Being and Knowledge 1,000 years ago. He was an ontologist who believed, he was like an existentialist. He said, we have to understand God as being. And he talked about being and knowledge. I reference it in my book. The other great Shia is Jafar al-Sadiq, who was one of these imams. And I have a book here of the sayings of all the 12 imams. They're profound, wise people, great philosophers, great sages. And when I first read them, all those years ago in my 20s, I thought, gosh, why has nobody told me about all this?
This wisdom is precious.
Wisdom is precious. And yet, if you recall, way back then, the West was talking about, we hate Iran, we're going to bomb them, they're all evil devil worshippers, we're the true Christians. And this Bible Belt Christianity was around in the Midwest in America. At the time of Khomeini's revolution in '79, saying, no, let's bomb Iran, they're terrible. I was saying, well, hang on, I've just been reading what they're saying, they're incredibly profound. Maybe we should actually talk philosophy with them instead. And in fact, Khomeini came from the Shia stronghold of Gnostic thought, which is called Irfan. It's a Gnostic tradition within Shiism, which is very, very profound. It's as profound as any other metaphysical system on the planet. And you can read the whole details on, if you click on the website. Allah has 99 names in Shiism and in Sunnism, but each one is a mystery and could take a whole year to fathom. So if you want to live to a ripe old age, spend a year like the truth, al-Haq, name number 51. So the truth, as I said earlier, talking about the troubles in Russia, Tolstoy believed the truth is the only thing that can set us free. He'd read in the Bible, the truth shall set you free. And yet, our culture disparages truth. It treats you as a sort of immature thinker if you get up in Parliament and say, we should talk the truth to each other. Like, what a greenhorn. But I don't agree. I'm with the al-Haq. I'm with the Shias saying, no, the truth is the thing that will set us free. I'm with Tolstoy. Anyway, many mysteries in Shiism. It's superb. And God is divine love. And there is an interesting centre at the University of Harvard which has online seminars about Ali and Shiism, run by a colleague of mine. And they just had a talk by an academic who's just written a study of Ali. And so there are thinkers trying to analyse this. And not long ago, they had a speaker who is a historian who's written the first biography of Ali in a Western language ever, academic biography, which I've got. So I think this is good. Let's have more thinking and discussion and seminars about Shiism. That's why I was honoured to accept the position as a research fellow at the University of Qom last year, just for 6 months, a little posting, but I was disappointed I didn't get to go to Qom, but one day I want to go on pilgrimage. And there's a religious, it's a university of religions and denominations. So it's an interfaith university. I'd love them to translate this into Persian, have it on their seminar wall and on their website. And, they would do that because Qom is very advanced intellectually. So that's good. Okay, any questions about Shiism? Does that answer?
Yes, it's very interesting. I was wondering the link between Shiism and Sufism, because Sufism is as a weak culture guy. I thought this was the more spiritual aspect of Islam, like Rumi, for example, is said as to be from Sufism.
Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I mean, okay, let me use an analogy.
Few words.
Sure. I'll use an analogy. So you know about chemistry.
Yes.
If you have a test tube with a Bunsen burner underneath it and you're bubbling, let's say water, you're boiling water, right? You're emitting oxygen and hydrogen gas, aren't you? That's what's coming out, I think, if you bubble the water. As steam, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're bubbling up if you have orange juice mixed with water in the other Bunsen burner, and you're bubbling it up, it's bubbling away, and you're still getting oxygen and hydrogen out of the thing, right? Now this test tube is called Shiism, and this one's called Sunnism.
Okay.
They're both producing oxygen. The Sufi is the guy up here who's flying around, who just is in love with oxygen.
Okay. Thank you.
And he doesn't care if it came out of the Shia or the Sunni test tube, because you get Sufis who are both Sunni and Shia, and they're people of freedom. So Rumi met and studied with great Sunnis and great Shias.
Okay.
He would honour wisdom wherever it comes, because he likes the oxygen.
Thank you.
That's how I would try and explain that. But we can't solve all the mysteries, because then there's Ismailis. They're interesting too, and they're another branch of Islam. But we'll deal with that another time, eh? Let's move to do the next one, which is the last one. We haven't done this before. I thought it'd be fun to do it. Box 168, which is philosophy and the humanities. And why is it there? What are the humanities? The whole point of the table is an educational tool. I mean, I created it as a teacher and academic. I want pupils and students and seekers like myself back in my early 20s. If I'd have had this table, I would have just been over the moon. And what I did was I organised a disciplined reading schedule, so I'd study the great texts of each one. I had to do it all alone because there wasn't a guide like this. But this makes it easier. And for teachers, it's really good. And as I say, that unless you know something about all the boxes, you're illiterate religiously and spiritually and philosophically. This is our human, it's not just our human right to know all this, but it's our human duty as well. Because human duties and rights go together. And so, naturally, the last one, humanities, is the general name in academia for a whole bunch of subjects, such as history, which is a very important part of the humanities, and geography, which is another very important subject. I was head of the humanities in a school in Nottinghamshire, which is, every school in Britain has a science faculty, an IT faculty. They also have a humanities faculty. And so when I was head of humanities, it meant I had oversight of the departments of history, geography and religious studies, making sure the teachers are delivering, the right topics, the curriculum and so on. It's to give children and adults and university students an oversight of these subjects. I don't think we're succeeding. My hands were tied in that school because we're just deliverers of a national curriculum that's set centrally, and we're not. The people that have dreamt up the history curriculum, for example, are not delivering an overview of all of history. What I think young minds need, I got it independently by studying privately at Calgary for those 4 years actually, is an overview of all of history. I wanted to know where every bit of history fit in. Like, did the Sumerians come first, or the Babylonians, or the Phoenicians, or the Jews, or the Greeks, or the Romans, or the Chinese, or the Indians? I wanted the chronology of it all. I wanted to be an archaeologist first, and by the way, that's part of these humanities cluster of subjects. So that when we come into incarnation on the planet, we know, we inherit all that wisdom from past generations of thinkers. We're not starting again. As a historian, I'm in awe of the work of former historians, and I want to know about them all. I have a duty and a right to learn about them all. In all languages and cultures, not just English, for God's sake, but all European languages and the great French historians, and going back to Latin and Greek, the founder of history, Herodotus and Thucydides. So I'd like our children to learn all that. as the first few lessons in history, so they know why it's important. That's proper humanities teaching. The same with geography. When I studied geography, I loved it because it was the world. We learned to read maps, to study contours, to understand how the landscape forms, what are valleys, what are mountains, where do they come from? Why are there different terrains on the earth? So we have a big globe in the geography teaching room, and we learn there are these different zones, temperate zones, the equator. This to me was wonderful, amazing. And as a kid I used to love maps and atlases. I still do. And my father, who also loved knowledge, would take me out, on country trips around Sussex to the South Downs and looking at, like, how did Devil's Dyke form in Sussex? It's a huge cavern. We still don't know. Geography might answer. The local Sussex tradition is the devil dug it one night to flood the valley. It looks man-made. It's so sharp. It's a mystery. So geography is fascinating. And why are there different people? And so anthropology comes into this as well. The different tribes and cultures of humanity. Because humanity that's the mystery here on this planet. I mean, mountains are fine, forests, they're doing their thing. We're causing the trouble. And we need to get a grip. And religious studies is also part of the humanities. So, in a sense, what I'm saying is all these are branches of religious studies and philosophy. But the last box, the 168th box, is the sum total of them all put together. So if you do really well, and you study them and learn them all, you might become a proper human being. That's kind of what I'm saying here. I'm also a humanist, so the concept of the humanities came out of the Renaissance idea of humanism, which is one of the boxes here. That our duty is to study humanity and where we come from and who are we and why. And it was the origin of psychology, and all of this feeds into the humanities. Some departments will put literature into the humanities. They'd say it's part of it. Because obviously literature is one way that we communicate language, both orally but also in writing and poetry and prose. So to me, the humanities are very important. And I don't like it when schools forget that. And they say that, no, we should just become computer slaves or robot worshippers or money slaves or economics or business slaves. Humanity is about freedom. And the reason we study the humanities is to learn about the extraordinary people in our history, as whether we're French or English or Russian or Chinese or African or whatever. We all have these noble families of great thinkers in the past. It's our right and our duty to learn about them. Like in Islam, Ibn Khaldun, great historian. In Germany, von Ranke, a great historian. In France here, Braudel, one of many great historians who've worked. And we can include Hegel as a historian of philosophy. So, and Sima Qian, the greatest historian of Chinese civilization, I believe if everyone knew this stuff in school, were taught this properly, we wouldn't come out fanatics, shouting against each other's race or ethnicity or religion. We'd come out compassionate towards each other and able to help each other intellectually along the path. So anyway, that's why the humanities are important to me, and that's why they're the last box on the table. The secret's been revealed tonight. Et bon. Okay, let's do a God card to finish. Because, yes, we'll do a God, and then, as Wittgenstein said, the rest is silence. Okay, let's have Thank you. Ooh. Okay. Ah. Okay. C'est quoi?
Krishna.
Ha! Okay. Krishna. Here he is in his little scene there with Radha, his consort. He's the Ten of Air. Do you want to just hold it for a minute? I'm going to look him up. So, the Ten of Air in the Tarot of the Gods, in volume 2. Yes, actually the last card in the 2 volumes, in fact. There is a huge bibliography that comes with this book. I spent months, well, over a year writing the thing. And there's never been a detailed study of the tarot that I've found in one sort of set. I figured the gods deserved a proper run at it, you know, because they represent the quintessence of all these cultures and civilizations, and it's the yearnings and thoughts of the people who've prayed to these gods over the centuries. If you did a mathematical count of how many prayers have been said to which gods, you know, they've all had millions and billions. Krishna's probably had more than most because he's one of the most loved gods in India, in the Hindu religion particularly. He's worshipped as the 8th avatar of Vishnu. So Vishnu's the god that can mend everything. We all need him. He's the motor mechanic, the plane mechanic. He's the global warming sorter. He's the peace person that ends the wars. He makes all the prison camps go away and be turned into little utopian green farming communities. He can wave a wand and all the prisoners are set free and become moral and kind citizens. He's a master magician. His name, he's very ancient deity. And he's also got a childish playfulness. So as a young boy, he grows up and plays tricks. He likes teasing the girls in a gentle way. Once when they're all swimming in the river, he steals all their clothes so they can't get out. That sort of stuff. So he's everyone. We're all Krishna in a sense. We all like playing games when we're young. But it's thought he was a real person in a particular part of India. Scholars differ the exact date, you know, BC, but when. There are mentions of him already by the 8th century BC. And, you know, so it's an ongoing sort of debate as to whether, when he lived, exactly. In the Mahabharata text, he's the charioteer of Arjuna, who's one of the major players, and he gives advice on the battlefield. That's when he had his incarnation, and it's not exactly known or agreed by historians when this Mahabharata battle took place, but at least 1000 plus BC. Some say 3000 BC. There's one of the frustrating things about Indian history is it's quite difficult to pin down to chronology, because they say, oh, it doesn't matter when he lived. You know, what's important is the teachings, boy. Forget about the dates. But I was trained in the Western historical school, and we care about the dates and the teachings. So there's a still, and when the British were in India, we were desperately trying to work out the dates of everything, which was helpful because it got Indian history pegged to chronology a bit more firmly, because we know exactly when Alexander the Great was in India. We have, you know, and we were able to work out the dynastic sequences using archaeology of the different Indian, you know, successions of power structures. But it's still not complete, that work. It's still ongoing. There are Indian scholars still working on all this. And when Krishna lived is a fiercely contested matter. And of course there are some, forgive the language, but Hindu fanatics who say he lived 50,000 years ago and he invented everything, electricity. He was there at the beginning of the universe and he invented flying machines and everything. There's a sort of Hindu nationalist adulation of Krishna, which I think is probably quite similar to what certain Christians have done to Jesus. They dehistoricized him and made him an emblematic God figure so that his humanity is less stressed. And of course this happened to Christ. There are people that say, yeah.
I'm sorry, just to interrupt
Sure.
you, because I thought that Krishna was, as Vishnu, a divinity with no relation to human existence, and you seem to say it's not the case.
No, he definitely took a human form like you
Okay,
and me.
okay.
He had an incarnation. That's what an avatar does. They take a body and descend. All I was discussing is the date of that descent is not agreed. But it was a long time ago. It was a long time before Christ. And the teaching was sublime. It's given in the Mahabharata when Arjuna asks Krishna, well, what's the meaning of life then? And he has a nervous breakdown on the field of the battle. He doesn't want to fight because he's got brothers and cousins and friends on both sides of the army. It's a bit like some chap in the middle of Ukraine-Russia war. Suddenly he doesn't want to fight. I know someone that whose father, a German-American, fought in World War II in D-Day, and they made it up the beach, and survived, and shot lots of Germans and all that, and survived. But then when they got to the top, they got through the lines, he sat down and cried. He sobbed because he was killing his own people. He was a German-American. Why was he doing this, And that's a true story. And I think Arjuna was having that moment too. And then Krishna gives him these sublime teachings, philosophically profound. They're one of the most important philosophical texts of Hinduism, in which he basically puts forward the yoga philosophy of life, that each of us is in incarnation to do certain dharmic tasks, our duties of this life, and we've contracted beforehand to come here and do it. So if you're a farmer, you've contracted to be a really good farmer and make those buffalo work and plant that rice or whatever it is. If you're here as a painter, to do the best painting you possibly can, or a builder, make palaces or whatever, or just a lover, a husband or wife. I mean, that's a sublime duty as well, or a parent. Every human activity is sacred, and we should do it with passion, devotion, and intelligence. That's what Krishna said. And also a warrior. If you are a warrior and you're trained, it's not for everybody, but if you've been trained as a warrior, and Arjuna was a great bowman, you have a duty to fulfill that dharma. And there's a war going on here, and you're fighting, for good against evil. And you've got to fulfill that dharma. You can't sort of flake out. If you wanted to be a conscientious objector, you should have told them 6 months ago, I'm sure Krishna would have accepted that, but having got to the battlefield, it's too late. Anyway, it's a masterpiece, and Gandhi loved it. He read that book, and it inspired his work as a peace activist, because ultimately conflict and violence is an illusion. And if we can see through to enlightenment, we realise the people we're fighting are ourselves. And if we get to a place of universal love, we can then bring concord. And that's the Druid perspective. That's what the Druids tried to do, because they had to play the Krishna role in many Celtic warrior battles. And our job was always to try and persuade them, are you sure you want to do this? No, stop. It's your cousin you're fighting. It's your dad. We would go literally on the battlefield and try and stop it before it started. That's in Caesar's work, because he respected the Druids. That's why he tried to kill us all. Didn't work, mate. And so I love Krishna. He's his worship transformed into the Bhakti movement. I tend to be more on the philosophical side of Hinduism, the Upanishads, the intellectual side. Krishna appeals to more the mass of Bhakti worshippers who like to go to the temple and sing and dance. They like to celebrate life. And with his consort Radha, it's a symbol of the happy couple. Radha and Krishna is on the wall of most Hindu couples' homes and families. I've been there many times. And there's nothing really in the Krishna movement that is anti-life or anti-sexuality. Love is great. Enjoy it within the dharmic bounds of what is the orthodox structure. But it therefore inspired the arts a lot. Krishna. If you go into temples throughout India, you'll see beautiful Krishna images, and they don't have this hatred of the image, which in Judaism and Islam they do. They think the human form is beautiful, celebrate it in art and dance. And in Assam, there are great temples to Krishna, and the Shakti, which is the feminine divinity. Interestingly, in Buddhism and Jainism, Krishna is also revered, and he's recognized as a great teacher. And so he spills out over the bounds of mere Hinduism. He's revered in the other traditions. His teachings are also similar to some aspects of Christianity, because Christ taught universal love, transcending racial, class boundaries, ethnicity, all that stuff. We should just love each other, and in a sense that's what the Bhakti tradition of Krishna does. Krishna is recognised as a saint in the Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica, the Gnostic Mass written by the occultist Aleister Crowley, interestingly enough, who designed his own tarot set and was a learned Cambridge scholar, and he liked Krishna. Typical 19th century, avant-garde, fin de siècle kind of thinker. So Edward Schuré, who was a French theosophist in the 19th century, a fan of Wagner, lived around Strasbourg. He wrote a famous book called The Great Initiates, and there's a wonderful entry on Krishna. What Schuré tried to do was write history from within. He was a friend of Rudolf Steiner, who was trying to read the Akashic records to get the real history of stuff. And he went into depth in meditation and prayer and so on to get the real story of Krishna. So Edward Schuré is a good source if you're interested. And not just for Krishna, but for some of these other great avatars. The Sikhs love Krishna, and he's mentioned in the Sikh scriptures. And also in the Baha'i faith, they revere Krishna. So, sadly, he died. Somebody took a shot at him, and it shot his ankle, and it went into his heel, and he died. It's quite similar to Achilles, that death. Achilles, the great Greek warrior, had a similar death, and when I was little, I had what's called an Achilles heel. It's when you suddenly lose your mobility in your leg. So where Krishna's body is after that death, well, there we are. I challenge any archaeologists in India to find it. Is he coming back anytime soon? Is there going to be a new avatar? There have been 9 avatars, and the 10th is going to be Kalki. And it's the same god, Vishnu, coming each time. So yeah,